Thank you for coming. So both historically and currently, manufacturing has been dominated by men. Surprisingly, there is a growing desire for women in manufacturing jobs today. Even news articles and editorials note that the importance of women in manufacturing. Moreover, there have been studies on the number of women in this field and the barriers they face. Thankfully, their support organizations and schools help pave a way forward. Depending on the numbers at any given time, there are approximately 600,000 open manufacturing jobs, and women are the largest demographic pool that can help meet this need. Research statistics prove that companies with women in leadership roles show increased rates of innovation and problem solving. They also experience a higher return on equity, better annual valuation, and wider range of decision-making perspectives, all of which drive business in the right direction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening for everybody joining us here today. I hope you're all well. Thank you for coming and welcome to our program, Slovenian Businesswomen Around the Globe. With today's title, Economic Prosperity Through Manufacturing Growth and Expansion. The main topics of the discussion will be the role of women in manufacturing and how can be expanded, best practices for companies that want to grow and create jobs, and specific challenges related to manufacturing jobs. You can also send the questions in the chat box or open your mic whenever you'd like to interact with our guest in the end of her presentation, of course. So before we invite our guest, I would like to give the word to Mr. Šalej, Stefan Šalej, the founder of Slovenian Global Business Network. Please, Mr. Šalej, the word is yours.
So, thank you very much, Mateja. Congratulations to organizing this fourth meeting. We at Slovenian Global Business Network, we are very happy that this, let's say, relationship with the important part of our community, which is the female community in business, is going so well. I thank you very much also to Mrs. Petra to accept our invitation. And personally, I'm very happy that we are talking about manufacturing. I spent 40 years of my life in manufacturing, very happy, producing something every day, coming on the end day that I have something to show up. And I'm happy that after 50 years in that company that I founded, they just put out and canceled the manufacturing of one of the products that is this photoelectric relay for public lighting. They say that after 50 years, it's time that we change the product. So manufacturing is exciting. You have to love it. The factory floor you have to be in, and it's more than machinery. Machinery has a life. The people make the machinery living subject. So I'm happy. I'm for sure we will learn a lot from your experience. And since we are now this week, the end of the week, we are celebrating the 30 years of the independent Slovenia. I want to emphasize, and here in the Slovenian Brazilian Chamber of Commerce, we are celebrating this is also the community. The independence of Slovenia didn't start 30 years ago. We were independent people in our mind and our heart, and our souls was independent for the century. We always feel committed to the spirit and soul of Slovenia through the generation. Remained Slovenian independent, and the Slovenian independence was not done only by the people in Slovenia. I think, and this is something, I feel very much that that it's not so much recognized that the community around the world, the Slovenian community, has a very important role during this history. Just remember that the US Slovenian community sent over 550,000 telegrams to the White House asking for the independent Slovenia. Just to remember a small, and for sure our guest speaker today has a very important role. So I'm not in charge to thank to everybody, not everyone, to help to Slovenia to become, and that our dream of our fathers and grandfathers and grandparents become true. I have no standing position to this, but as a citizen, as a Slovenian for generations who fight for this, and my family was active in road health. And so I'm proud of all of you. I'm proud to be a Slovenian. So with the Slovenian Global Business Network, we work to put us together with the Slovenian values, and let's be happy, and let's make more business. So thank you very much, Mrs. Petra, and congratulate you for your career. I'm very proud that we have the ladies engineers for the beginning, let's say, and so outstanding as other members of our community who are present here with us. So thank you very much to accept the invitation. Mateja, congratulations, and please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Šarek, for your kind words. So now our guest of honor today, she's a Slovenian entrepreneur, born in Maribor, growing up in Pittsburgh, USA, where she also currently lives. I'm honored to present you Ms. Petra Brachko. She's the president and CEO of Catalyst Connection, a private non-profit economic development organization dedicated to helping manufacturers with management, consulting, technical assistance, leading to business growth and job creations. With almost 30 years experience in manufacturing strategy and operation, business and economic development. Before joining Catalyst Connection, she was employed by GE Aircraft Engines, now GE Aviations. She holds a Bachelor in Mechanical Engineer from the University of Daytona and Master's from the University of Cincinnati. Ms. Petra has collected honors, including a Top Women in Business Leader in 2011. In 2012, she owned Top Energy Leader. In 2016, Most Admired CEOs in Pittsburgh by the Pittsburgh Business Times. She's also on the board of directors of the Advanced Robotics and Manufacturing Institute. She's also a former member of the board of Pittsburgh branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, and also the honorary consul for the Republic of Slovenia. Welcome, Ms. Petra. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much. This is really exciting. I just can't wait to meet all of you and get to know all of you in future meetings like this, and hopefully in person sometime.
So Petra, we would just like to stop here a little bit with Slovenia, or we start here. So we would like to know a little bit about your connection with Slovenia. How do you see Slovenia? I believe you're coming to visit soon.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I was born in Slovenia. I was born in Maribor, so I'm a Štajerka, and I'm very excited. I have lots of family in Maribor. I have family in Murska Sobota, and over the years, I've made new friends all over the country, including my new friend, Mateja, and my new friend, Dr. Chalet. So I'm very excited. And you asked me the question, how do I see Slovenia? I am so proud and impressed by what the Slovenian country has done in the last 30 years. But as Dr. Chalet said, it's been coming for hundreds of years. We are independent people. We are proud, but yet we work hard. Slovenians are incredibly intelligent. And some of the things that I'm seeing around green initiatives, around global initiatives for such a small country to be able to play the kind of important role that we're playing in a global economy. And then, of course, the sports. The sports is just unbelievable. I just can't even imagine such a small country having so many world-class athletes. It's fantastic.
So your two favorite sports are golfing and cycling. Have you ever tried cycling around Slovenia or golfing in these such a nice fields?
Yeah, not golfing, but biking for sure. The last time my husband and I visited, we rented bikes and biked all over Lake Bled and that area. And I already have my bikes reserved for Maribor, so we'll be doing quite a bit of cycling around the Maribor and Murska Sobota areas in 2 weeks, July 3rd.
It's going to be very hot, so
yeah,
hydrate a lot.
Yeah.
So Petra, I believe you have some presentation for us that you'd like to share.
Yep.
So just to learn a little bit more about you and your activities. So please be my guest.
Okay. Well, certainly good afternoon, everyone, and thank you again for joining us. And I definitely want to thank Matea and Dr. Chalet for creating the Slovenian Global Business Network, in particular for this focus on Slovenian women around the world. I think this is an excellent idea. I'm really looking forward to participating and hearing some of your stories as well. Let's see. Let me just make sure my screen moves forward. Let's see. Okay, my screen is not moving forward, so I'm going to have to stop for a moment and reshare. I think I know what happened. This technology, you would think after 1.5 years we'd have it figured out. How's that? Okay. My agenda is, I plan to cover the things that Matea had mentioned, maybe in a slightly different order. So I would like to share a little bit about my personal story, introduce my company and my community, the area around Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have some facts about manufacturing that may be of interest to you. And I would like to talk about some of the unique circumstances that we as women face, which we can certainly overcome if we are intentional. And my overall objective is to really demonstrate that manufacturing can be the key to economic prosperity for communities and for families all over the world, just as it's been for my own family. So, Matea did an excellent job reading to you my bio. I'm very proud of my work at Catalyst Connection. I've been here for over 30 years, and I've been its leader for about 15 years now. And as she mentioned, we are a nonprofit organization. We serve small and medium-sized manufacturers throughout our community. And we're part of a national network called the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, whereby every small manufacturer, every small company in the United States has access to a program like ours. And you can see some of the other things that Matea mentioned. And one of the things I'm most proud of is my role as the honorary consul for the Republic of Slovenia. And I'm sharing here a picture of my honorary consul office. Just a little bit about my personal story. My parents immigrated to the United States in 1971 from Maribor with literally almost nothing. They came with 2 suitcases. And their plan was to stay here in the United States, stay in Pittsburgh for 1 year or 2, and then go back to Slovenia to build their house and live out the rest of their lives. Well, obviously they never went back because I've lived almost my entire life here in Pittsburgh. You see, my dad worked as a machinist in a precision manufacturing company. I am the product of a family-sustaining career in manufacturing, where an immigrant with nothing can aspire to create a comfortable middle-class life, ultimately sending me to college and creating opportunities for me that he never could have imagined for himself or my mom. So I've already introduced Catalyst Connection, what we do as a nonprofit, but I'd like to tell you about our very unique location, our physical space. We're within the structure of a former steel mill. The external framework was part of a company that had roughly 12,000 workers during its peak and supplied a large amount of steel to the World War II effort. But like many industrial sites, production stopped and the building stayed empty for many years before it was redeveloped into an advanced technology and manufacturing hub. Our location reminds us every day as to where manufacturing was many years ago and where it can be again in the future. Our renewed focus is on commercializing advanced manufacturing technologies as developed by our major universities, research universities in Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh itself is an iconic city. It's been well known both positively and negatively around the world. Our area is about the size of New Jersey, and we have a little over 2.5 million people in the greater Pittsburgh region. The Pittsburgh region itself is the birthplace of American steel, where industrial titans such as Carnegie and Westinghouse began their businesses. We have 3 beautiful rivers that culminate in our downtown area that are among the busiest ports, inland ports in the United States, where they carry coal, steel, and other metals down the Ohio River and into the Midwest. The rivers are also part of the high quality of life, where arts, culture, sports, recreation culminate around these 3 rivers. And as you can see, they make for very, very beautiful pictures of our city. Our community is very lucky to be in a strategic location of the United States that put us in the forefront of this relatively short history that I talked about. And I'm just going to give you a flavor for that history. Starting in the 1850s, Pittsburgh was known for having saved the whales. Yeah, the whales. At that time, everyone relied on whale oil for lighting, and there was a real concern that there would not be enough whales to sustain the need. At the same time, an entrepreneur in Pittsburgh determined how to distill oil into kerosene, which replaced the whale oil and saved the whales. So that's a true story. Soon after, other industrial titans began their businesses, and the industrial age was born right here in our community. That's also when mass immigration began, with people from Ireland, Italy, and all over Eastern Europe. We continue to this day to have a very large Slovenian American population in our community. But let me assure you, these immigrants, they worked hard and they suffered. Working conditions were not good, and the air quality was really, really bad. Soon after we were known for having saved the whales, we became known as a very dirty place. And then soon after that, the steel industry collapsed and we became known as a Rust Belt declining city. Fortunately, at the same time, folks at Carnegie Mellon University, they began developing robots. And soon the future of Pittsburgh as a center for robotics and technology and manufacturing, that new future was created. But when I mentioned earlier, if we think about manufacturing, we have to think about the hard work, the suffering that many of our families endured to build the industrial age, leading to the lives that we are living today. So today, Pittsburgh's known as a very diverse economy. It's a great place to live. It's fun here. We're known around the world, center of robotics, vehicles, autonomous vehicles, energy, and advanced manufacturing. So that's where I'm going to talk a little bit about manufacturing. Manufacturing is critical to the US economy, and I would say it's probably critical to many of the economies of the countries that are represented today. We have to make things. In the US, while manufacturing is a relatively small sector by employment and contribution to GDP, it has very large contributions where when manufacturing succeeds, many other sectors in our economy succeed. But let's look at this longer term trend. Since 1996, as manufacturing imports rose, supporting many developing economies such as China and other countries, look what happened to manufacturing jobs. A net loss of 4.6 million jobs. And this doesn't even go back as far as the 1970s, which we were talking about earlier. The loss of these jobs has had a very negative impact on Middle America, where entire communities have been left behind, where there's been blight and poverty and hopelessness. One can even think that this is one of the reasons that Donald Trump was elected president. People felt left behind and they wanted a change. Fortunately, the United States, things are changing, and the costs of the United States are becoming more competitive. We're decreasing costs with advanced technologies, and with a rising middle class, costs are increasing in China and many other countries. So there is room for optimism. Manufacturing companies have to prepare themselves, however, to be competitive, whether you're in the United States or any other country in the world. To secure new business, there are things you have to do so that you can continue to create jobs for your community. So what are manufacturers doing to take advantage of these trends? This is based on some analysis that we did in our region, but I believe this to be relevant to pretty much any manufacturing company in our country and probably in the world. So as we evaluated well over $1 million worth of investments in an 8-month period, we noticed that investments in people were at the top of the list. This isn't surprising since talent attraction and retention is the #1 challenge that manufacturers and companies in our community and our country are facing. So companies are finding themselves, they have to make investments in leadership, skills training, coaching up senior leaders, young professionals, frontline supervisors, and apprenticeship programs. Coming in at a close second are initiatives to grow the top line. So things like strategic planning, lead generation. How do we use new technologies, digital sales strategies, e-commerce? The pandemic has all but shut down most in-person trade shows, and companies realize that they need new strategies and new approaches to fill their sales pipeline. And finally, investments in operational improvements, where new technologies are needed to be competitive. So companies are rethinking, how do they lay out their facility in a post-COVID world? And how are they using digital technologies to improve manufacturing processes? So examples include additive manufacturing like 3D printing, machine vision, and data-driven planning. So for those of us that are already in the business, we should ask ourselves, what are we doing to make our companies better, stronger, more inclusive, and a desirable place to work? And as job seekers, we have a right to expect these improvements from our employers. So let's talk for a minute about technology. And I know that many Slovenian entrepreneurs are at the forefront of Industry 4.0 technologies. Industry 4.0 in its simplest form is the integration of digital and physical technologies, including some of the things I just mentioned: 3D printing, robotics, digital technologies. Just think about it for a minute. It is no longer good enough for a robot to complete a task over and over again. That's not enough. That robot now needs to evaluate every situation in real time and self-correct. The robot must be integrated into an entire digital thread so that the impacts of its changes can be accommodated later in the process. And it has to store all its data so that it can learn from it in the future. That's a big job for any robot, but with modern advancements, it's possible, and it is already occurring. So let's look at the impact on the workforce. Based on the growth opportunities we discussed and the advancement of technologies, the US manufacturing sector is expected to grow. But the problem is there are not enough people to fill those jobs. It's estimated that over 2 million jobs will go unfilled. Now, some of this does have to do with a lack of awareness, and it's one of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to all of you today. People just don't realize the opportunities that might be available to them in manufacturing. Some of it has to do with manufacturing's history of boom and bust, its bad reputation as a dirty, air polluting type of an industry. And some of it has to do with the skills gap. There just is not enough people that can program, monitor, and maintain the kind of sophisticated equipment that is needed for manufacturing to grow and succeed. I would maintain that fulfilling these jobs is a challenge for everybody in the community. I suspect that the manufacturing sector in many other countries may be experiencing the same workforce skills shortage. As business leaders, we must think about the work environment we're creating for our workers to encourage them to want to work for us, to be excited about their jobs and their companies. And as job seekers, we have to be open to enhancing our skills, to learn new things. And as parents and as mothers, we must encourage our children, and particularly our daughters, to pursue careers in manufacturing. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about women in manufacturing. Women represent 30% of manufacturing workers in the United States, yet we represent 47% of the population. And to make it worse, women are more likely, almost 2 times more likely to leave the industry than men. And the reasons that are given for this, the top reason is that work-life balance. It's just been very difficult, particularly in light of the pandemic and during the pandemic, for women to be able to maintain all of their responsibilities at home and still perform on the job. As women leaders, we must recognize and accommodate the unique circumstances that our female employees may have, caring for children, caring for parents, caring for others. And there are many ways that we can make those accommodations if we're open-minded. And as women workers, I would say we shouldn't be afraid to ask or demand even that our needs be met. We know that we will go the extra mile for our companies, our families, our communities, but we're allowed to do it in our own way. Those of us that are in the industry, we have to create that way. We have to become the model for the future. And as I mentioned, as mothers, we have to encourage our children, especially our daughters, that they can do science, they can do math, and they can have meaningful careers and still have families. And we have to support them on those journeys. Of course, nothing's ever easy for women. In addition to all the common skills that we need to develop that all business leaders must possess, such as strategic thinking, building and supporting a team to create and retain workers, we have to develop our own unique skills that address some inherent deficiencies that are often because of the environment that we've been brought up in. Those are through no fault of our own. But we have to build up our confidence. We have the skills, the knowledge to contribute, the competencies, but we have to be willing to fail. Failure is not the end all. It's a path to growth, and we have to be willing to accept it. We have to keep moving. We have to be willing to ask for what we want. And we have to take the time, in addition to everything else we have to do, we have to build that network. And those of us further along in our careers, we have to be willing to help other women succeed. So I'm near the end. I just wanted to end with a couple pieces of advice that I like to share with people that will listen. So the first one, if you're in business, it doesn't matter, nothing happens until somebody sells something. And I would add to that, everybody's in the business of business development. And so what do I mean by that? You don't have to be in sales for this to apply to you. Every sale is only as good as the last product that was delivered and the last interaction that the customer had. So I would say everyone in the company is in the business of business development. And then second, I would say leaders lead. And that means you don't need a title to be a leader. You need a plan and the willingness and the desire to implement the plan. Now, there is a catch. To be a leader, you do need to achieve results, but you also need to make sure that your team is rewarded, that they feel valued, that they're part of the process. You have to get the results, but the people that are involved should be happy. That to me is what it means to be a leader. And finally, you should know what Industry 4.0 is. I talked a little bit about it, but we should all learn more about it, how it works. How can we be part of the advanced technology of the future, regardless of what our role or our career path is? And lastly, please consider manufacturing for yourselves and your families. Industry 4.0, the backbone of the future of manufacturing, requires people to make it happen. And let's support each other. When manufacturing succeeds, everyone has the opportunity to prosper and be happy. And with that, thank you. And I really appreciate everyone taking the time to hear my story and learn a little bit about manufacturing in the United States and probably all over the world. I will stop sharing and turn it over to Matea. Thank you.
Thank you, Petra, Mitchell, and for this impressive and informative presentation. Petra is an advocate for small manufacturers. So in 2015, you have helped Catalyst Connection over 14 co-applicants and more than 80 supporting partners entered the Investing and Manufacturing Communities Partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Only 24 areas in the entire country in the partnership. This national recognition from the U.S. Economic Development Administration places Pittsburgh in an elite group, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, I had a little note on it. I didn't really touch on it, but more recently, the Pittsburgh region was named as one of 6 defense manufacturing communities in the United States. So an even smaller, more elite group, I would say. And it's really, again, based on our strength as a historical center of the industrial age of steel, advanced materials, coupled with our developments in technology and our willingness to work together in our community. I would say those are really the 3 aspects that led the U.S. Department of Defense to give us a designation that was only one of 6 in the country.
So we said overall trends in U.S. manufacturing, many Americans associate the manufacturing industry with a decline in the U.S. economy, and you're working to change that.
Yeah, and there's reasons. I shared the data. The data supports that. There's reasons to think that manufacturing, has declined. I mean, it has declined in terms of jobs. But again, we can't give up on it because it's critical. Manufacturing is one of those industries that has such an incredible impact on other sectors. So if you think about professional and business services, accountants, attorneys, consultants, if you think about the retail, hospitality and retail, they're all dependent on manufacturing, surviving and thriving in a community.
Yeah. I would like to also welcome Mr. Vladimir Dobosh, civil engineer living in Belgium. He just joined us. Welcome. Petra, just one more question. How countries managing manufacturing and economic growth in the post-pandemic era?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
How country is managing manufacturing and economic growth in post-pandemic era?
Yeah, it's very challenging for companies in the greater Pittsburgh region, primarily from a workforce perspective. There just are not enough people that are interested right now that are even looking for jobs, let alone interested in the kinds of jobs that manufacturers have to offer. And this is a systemic problem, not only in our region, all over the country. So we're doing a lot to, let's say, cast a wider net. So women, minorities, people with barriers, disabilities, wherever we can find some folks that might be interested in a family-sustaining, career-oriented job with training and opportunities for development. If you're out there, we're looking for you.
And Petra, just last question. What are the plans for next 5 to 10 years to come?
Well, certainly in our community, we are very interested in growing the intersection of manufacturing and advanced technologies. Mm-hmm. So what do I mean by that? Artificial intelligence and machine learning. Carnegie Mellon University is among the leading researchers in these fields. And so how do we take what they're developing and learn to apply it in real world situations that can then benefit and create jobs for everybody in our community? That's our biggest challenge right now. And we're working together to try to make that happen. And I'm confident that we'll be successful.
Right. So I'm gonna leave the floor for some questions and comments. If anyone wants to raise a hand, I think Mr. John Doma, he would like to have a word. Please.
Hey, yes, Petra, that was wonderful and very inspiring with all the things that you do, and certainly coming from Slovenia and advancing yourself in the U.S. is incredible. And I can speak on that another half hour. But we resonate. I'm from the Burlington, Hamilton area. You're probably somewhat aware of Hamilton as a steel manufacturing center in Canada. Yeah. And I resonate with all your concerns. I mean, I'm in the public accounting field. And I do work with a lot of Slovenian manufacturing companies that are now taken over from the second generation from their parents. And it's wonderful to see, and I keep encouraging them to do these things, but they definitely have challenges in attracting people. Many of the people that they had were from Europe, Eastern Europe, were machinists like your dad, came to Canada, applied their trade and all that, and do have challenges. And I guess because they don't have the capital, it's hard for them to sort of, work with the local colleges and universities. McMaster University in Hamilton is very big into material management as well, of all types. They're probably very similar to Carnegie in your area. But I guess what you as I guess you're very focused in the U.S., but in Canada, I don't know if your travels ever take you up this guest with our members that are in manufacturing, if there's any like the how-to side of things. You hit on all the challenges. Is how do we get to that part of what are you doing in Pittsburgh to do that? Is that something you can present? I mean, if you want to speak on it for a few minutes, is great.
Yeah, I mean, I tried to address it a little bit at a very high level, I understand earlier, but one of the first things that needs to happen is a company has to become a good place to work. People have to want to work there. And that means everything from, wages and benefits, which is important, but also, are they involved in problem solving? Are they involved in, initiatives of the company? Do they feel like they're part of a team? And this is the role of the employer to make that happen. And the companies that do that successfully are the ones that are finding the workers and succeeding. And so, if we visit a company, the very first question we might ask is, how many referrals do you get from your current employees? If your employees are not referring their friends and family to your company for a job, that is a huge sign that you have a problem. And so that, it sounds simple, but that is probably the first place to start in thinking about, how do I attract that workforce?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in Canada, by the way? Like,
I love Canada. I'm not sure. Are they letting me in? I don't know.
like on the road.
As soon as they let us in, we'll be happy to go.
So would you be willing to come up at one time or another? Or
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
it's virtual these days, but sometimes it's nice to see face to face. But
Yeah.
definitely.
I think Pittsburgh to Hamilton's only about a 5-hour drive, I believe.
Yes. So we probably have about 20 to 30 manufacturers that I think would be very interested in, seeing you
Sure.
and having probably some kind of a session of some type, and we'd be willing to pay.
Oh yeah, no, that's okay. Yeah, no, I'd be happy to come. Yeah, we can talk offline about it. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Thank you, Mr. John Dumas. And now Yanis Plevana has to ask the question.
Okay. So thank you. First, thank you very much for the great presentation, really inspiring. And my question is about education. And so what changes would be necessary in order to facilitate this formation of talents, for the manufacturing sector? I know that Dr. Shali, he was involved in bringing trades schools from Austria to Brazil, and knowledge from Slovenia to Brazil that greatly help develop people and talents for the manufacturing sector. And what is being done in the US in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, similar. So as you know, in the US, we have a kindergarten through 12, we call it required school, high school. During that period, we don't require students to have a career pathway, right? And so we're doing quite a bit to help instill STEM education at that level. That's one of the big, I would say, strategies of the education community. How do we instill science, technology, and math skills at those levels? And sadly, even in modern times, there are still many students in this country that are not gaining those skills, those very basic math skills that are required. And we hear that from employers all the time, that workers that are coming to apply for jobs don't have the basic math, measurement, problem-solving skills that it takes to succeed. So there's a whole conversation you could have at the educational level. But you're right, at the technical skills, we do have a vocational system, a career and technical education system in the United States. I know in my community in Pennsylvania, we don't encourage students to pursue high demand occupations. So in other words, if you're going to pursuing vocational education and you want to be a hairdresser, it's just as good as if you want to be a machinist from the perspective of the schools. And that is terrible. We need to fix that. Nothing against hairdressers, but we don't have 2 million job openings for hairdressers. We have 2 million job openings for manufacturing workers. And then I would say, lastly, it's apprenticeship. So the big focus right now in the United States is on apprenticeship programs. And apprenticeship programs here are a little different from what my understanding is in Europe. So we begin apprenticeship programs on the job. We don't begin them in high school or at a young age. We begin them on the job, where workers are employed, they're receiving a wage, they're receiving benefits, all those kinds of things. And then they're also receiving classroom education or instruction and on-the-job training. And when they're able to demonstrate a set list of competencies, then we deem them to have been successful and we give them that apprenticeship certification. So those are kind of some of the things that we're currently focused on to address some of the workforce skills gaps.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Levania. Anyone else?
Yes, Margaret Rudolph here. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Margaret.
Excellent, hi. On a very different level of question, as you know, I'm in Vancouver, and our Slovenian community is aging, but there is a crop of younger people, and I'm still exploring to see what sort of work they do and what industries. And my question to you is the following: you're located in the US, but what can we do together to spread your message here in Vancouver and to reach out to younger people as examples and words of encouragement and networking, Petra? And by the way, I loved your presentation. Congratulations. You're very accomplished.
Oh, no, that's okay. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, what I like to phrase it as career awareness and workplace learning. So what do I mean by that? Career awareness, just the kinds of things I shared with you today, geared, at a younger audience. We have a whole slew of videos, social media. We have young people that are in the profession talking to other young people to share their personal stories. So I'm a middle-aged woman. It's much better for a young professional to be speaking to other young professionals, right? So that's one thing. Workplace learning, I think, is also very critical. We need to get our students out of the classroom and into the workplace. And that can be very simple. Just let's take a tour to all the way to let's have an internship, a pre-apprenticeship, some kind of a work experience that will give you that hands-on, like, oh, this is what it's like. This is pretty cool. And then I think there's a whole slew of things in between that we, that kind of from here to there as well. Matea, John asked a question. Yes, so in the United States, we have a significant amount of investments occurring right now with our new government. Their strategy is to invest, and the programs, like I said, a significant amount of investment in apprenticeship programs right now. We're seeing a lot of money in that, and a lot of investments in what I would say Buy American. So unfortunately, if you're listening to this from another country, not the US, we are trying to encourage a Buy American, Buy Local mentality. And so there's funding available to support that as well.
So here in Canada, Petra, just, there are programs for apprenticeship programs and tax credits.
Yeah.
To employers of certain size. Unfortunately, I don't know why they do that, but there's that part of it. And I guess when milestones are reached, and we do have that here. But a company doesn't, other than the manufacturing rates for companies, the corporate tax rates on profits are fairly, very low. There isn't a lot that we do here. And I don't think there's a lot we do here to encourage young people. We all talk about it, say, hey, we need you. And I guess that should be enough to encourage people to go because they'll have a job and it's all there. But there isn't too much. I know for ourselves in our profession, we reimburse students for their exams. The preparatory expenses, could be upwards of $8,000 to $10,000 per team member for us. But it's still tough for manufacturing. And I know the US with the Buy American strategy, at the end of the day, everybody asks for price. What's the price? the only way you're going to deal with that in the US, I would think, is, duty. And it's going to cost you more money to buy products from outside the country. Right. And that side. So, I don't know how much that's going to help if you're going to buy US products when nobody in the US is making it. You're forcing manufacturers to say, we can't make this because we can't source it in the US. Now, where do we go? So,
yeah, there's definitely challenges associated with some of these strategies. You're right. But, in terms of kind of where the government is investing, I would say they are putting that, their money into those kinds of programs to at least move the needle.
Yeah, Margaret from Vancouver, just to add, we have a very strong STEM program at University of British Columbia. And it's a very successful one with internships, but the issue is to be a little creative, and my approach is to zero in on opportunities. And you might chuckle at this, but bees. So our Consul General for Canada is Alesha Mitsigoy, who is running Medex, major bee products industry. And at UBC, we have a geneticist who works closely with the Bee Academy in Ljubljana. And I'm trying to figure out, it's beyond just bees, it's a whole area of manufacturing and product development. And in a small way, I'm zeroing in on that world and that industry. And I've created an exchange program between UBC and the Bee Academy people. So here's just a small example. We don't have, unlike in Toronto, manufacturing opportunities, but small doors are opened where other opportunities can develop.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That seems like a great idea. And Matea, there's a question about coaching programs for women. And we actually do in our community, we have a women in leadership program that basically addresses the competencies that I shared in one of my slides. So what is the Buy American? So it's an executive order by President Biden where companies that secure large federal contracts, so let's say to build a highway, replace a bridge, something like that, a certain percentage of their supply spending has to be with US companies. And if they can't meet that, they have to ask for special permissions, and there's penalties to their contract and all those kinds of things. So it's trying to encourage large federal contractors to, buy from American companies.
Thank you. Mr. Stefan Schale, do you want to add something?
There are so many Shale. Do you mean me, or that is my niece who is colleague from also is asking something about mentoring and coaching, Anna Paula from Belgium. And we have also Mr. Dobosh, who is from Belgium and working in many South African and manufacturing sector, and he just has a last presentation to Slovenian business community 2 or 3 weeks ago. But maybe that I will come back to the basic question. Nowadays, working in industry means, let's say, some kind of second-class job. We become in our society that it's very nice and fine if you are working in banking sector and service sector, and maybe that we dreams to be in Amazon or IT industry and so on. I think that we have to work a little bit on the basic. For instance, in my family, my grandfather was a miner in Salzburg from our father's side. My father was in industry. I am in industry. My son is in industry. So the tradition is let's say, working basically that industry is not something which is bad, but industry is something very good. I personally changed from trade to industry to produce something. I was tremendously happy that you come in the morning at 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, and when you get out, you have a product which is, you produce more than just a product. You as Mrs. Petra mentioned, all this involvement of the people in the workforce that we call it. So maybe that we have to work even in our organization specifically to bring young people to talk to young people, because the message of this generation is completely different. I mean, their communication is different, and there is no society, frankly speaking. If someone believe that you can have only the society of trade business or service business without industry, you have a nice example, Singapore, which is also industry, or Netherlands, for instance, that it doesn't exist at all. So we have to rethink all this, and especially with tradition in our Slovenian community around the world. There are much more manufacturing, there are much more Slovenian business people in manufacturing than in any other business. We are essentially, as you mentioned on the beginning, we are essentially hard working, which in industry could be much more successful than in some other business, which is, let's say, require other capabilities and skills. So Mateja, let's take this lesson and work on how to exchange also our relationship. And that is another difficult task. For me, is the most difficult one, is the succession process in the industry, where the women has a specifically important and maybe the main job to do it. It's not easy to make a company. This is not easy, but it's much more difficult to maintain this company alive. I remember that you used to work with GE. I was honored. My company was associated with GE Lighting for many years in Brazil and around Latin America and around the world during the Jack Welch time. And I even give to my kids always GE shares on birthday, which they sold it on the right time. Let's say when it was value $65 or 45, now it's to $13, let's say. But the example of good management in industry and management, like iconic company like GE, also push a lot of young people to be in industry. This is something. Or reorganization of the steel industry, let's say that it's happened. So the industry is very dynamic job. I used to say that in individual basis, I have never a short time planning. When you cross the door, factory door, you have a lot of situation which you have to avoid to be problems. So you have a strategy, long-term strategy or short-term strategy even, but day by day it's funny how you have many things to be solved in all the levels. And I like very much one of your sentences. There is not individuals or department sales-oriented or market-oriented. The company have to be from top down and from down up to top, market-oriented, customer-oriented. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Anna Paula Schale, she raised her hand. She'd like to give a question. Please. Turn on.
Oh, sorry. I thought that I've done it right. Thank you, Mateja. Thank you, Petra. Congratulations for your presentation. First, I have three main commentaries. First, I'm not in the industry. I work with public policies, but it was I'm very glad to listen you talk about women, challenges that we face, and stereotypes. And when I asked about mentoring and coaching, it's because really we think that to change a little, the stereotype of a leader, the man stereotype, and we need a different kind of leadership to look at human resources in a different way does not mean that we are not leaders. That means that we are taking a different look at people and what are their needs. And that's the thing that you commented little, and I would like to talk with you a little more, because really the women leadership sometimes mean a different human research approach, and sometimes a lot of women try to mold themselves into the stereotype of a man leader, and they sometimes are worse leaders than are worse and more difficult to deal than some men. This other thing that you pointed that is very interesting is that when you talk about the hairdressers, and I was once in a Brazilian state talking about public policy and how to about social policy, and they were training 2,000 hairdressers. And I asked, you never look at the market, what the market needs. And that's the big problem that I see in Brazil. Normally, social policies, when they try to include people, they do not look at the market. Are you working with any social policy? I know that in the States, things are very different concerning social policies and how it works, because maybe it's a very important approach and necessary. It's necessary now to change the approach of our social policies. The last one, industries produces value, add value. And the last time that I've been to USA, I went to Washington with my husband, who works with artificial intelligence. And the driver was a migrant. And he during the chit chat, he told us that we will not have workers for the next generation. And you refer to the same thing. We need workers, and we are not doing it. We are not preparing. We are not changing our educational systems to do it. And we, in my perspective, we are overvaluing the university, and we are not valuing the technical courses that are. What do you think about it?
Well, yeah, you provided a lot of insights, and I just wanted to say you're absolutely right. My comment about hairdressers, because I have to be careful when I say that. I don't want to offend any hairdressers. I mean, that we need them for sure. My point was, you're absolutely right. We need to train people for the jobs that are in demand, for where there are career opportunities, not where there is an overabundance, let's say, of individuals. So that was my point, and I appreciate you clarifying that. In terms of, so the question about universities comes up a lot. You know, we need to send people to college. People should get a college degree. I have a college degree. I'm a big fan of college degrees. My view is that, yes, the students that have the ability and the desire and the motivation to pursue college education should pursue college education. Many times, so in our community, 70% of our high school students go to college. So it's just a demographic, let's say. 70%, 17 or 18-year-olds go to some kind of college. Many times our message is for, first of all, the 30% that have no post-high school plan. They do nothing. They work at McDonald's. How can we get that 30% to be thinking about a career producing job moving forward with some level of technical skills, whether it's vocational school or a trade school or something like that? And then going back to the 70%, we know that in our country, very few students finish college in 4 years. And many students never finish college at all. So how do we target that 70% of students and say, okay, maybe only 50% of you have the ability, the desire, and the competencies to successfully pursue college education? How do we target the other 20% and give them options so they're not wasting their parents' money or they're not going into debt unnecessarily? So, you know, all those kinds of things. So I am not saying people shouldn't go to college. In fact, we need them. We need engineers, we need management professionals, accountants, and attorneys. But at least in our country, we have so many people going to college that are just, they go because they have nothing else to do. And that's not the right reason to be going to college. And those are the people we're trying to target, and their parents at the high school level, to make better decisions about their future.
Thank you. Mr. Dobosh would like to have a word, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Well, Petra, it was very nice to hear your story, although I must admit I came a little bit late. But I heard a lot of recognizable things which I can fully understand and fully underline here also from this continent. We, especially if you talk about manufacturing, if you look, and again, I'm coming back a little bit to Belgium as a small country, not comparable with Slovenia. In Belgium, our manufacturing part as a percentage of brutto national product has dropped to less than 15%. If you go to south of Germany, it's 25. It's more than 25% and even growing. So a lot also depends on the intentions, or let's say the program of the government to support the industry. The government was not interested in manufacturing in Belgium, so it dropped. But manufacturing also brings taxes. It brings knowledge. It brings, if you do it right, there is a cluster of manufacturing which empowers each other. You find people which are interested to go there. It's not a dirty job. If you don't pay attention to that, let's say one after the other closes, and at a certain moment the government came to the conclusion, where is the taxes coming from? And there is a problem also for us in Belgium specifically. We don't find the people. As you said, people find it a dirty job, and that's absolutely not right. People, certainly the software people, they want to do IT business, they want to program games, they want to be in the computer business. And although in the manufacturing there's a lot of possibilities there also, so we have to make it attractive. And how do we do that? Yeah, we just have to educate, and we just have to make our company attractive, as you said, by speaking the word, and the people do that. And if they find it nice, then I see that other people are joining in, and we have to train them by ourselves. It takes 2-3 years before they are, before you can get an educated student knowing what is a robot to be productive in our business, what we do. So I hear a lot of recognizable things, and in that sense, it may be interesting to talk possibilities after this presentation. By the way, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
For a woman, you have to be courageous, and need a lot of strength to go to school.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dobosh. Any comments on that, Ms. Petra?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the policies in your country, but it sounds, very similar to our country. And we're in a good position, I think, from the perspective of federal investment now, is helping us, people like me, to make a difference, maybe make a more significant difference in what we were able to do. And again, that's just the current administration. Things change here every 4 years. 4 years from now could be completely different. So we have about a 4-year window to really make some significant change. So that's what I'm focused on.
Maybe I can comment on that.
Mm-hmm.
I see it very difficult to regain a position in the manufacturing industry. You're not only losing a production facility, but you lose also a lot of know-how and a lot of experienced people. And to bring that back is a hell of an investment. So what I see here in these places where the bigger factories, like the Ford Motor Company, like Alcatel, like other companies, they disappeared. And what you see instead is the small companies coming up with new initiative, with niche markets, but you don't see any large investment anymore, also because of, let's say, the wage evolution, which made that Belgium is a very high cost country. On the contrary, I see still initiatives in Eastern Europe and especially also in Slovenia, which makes me, let's say, makes me happy that it still happens there, because it gives a lot of possibilities.
So our time just come to the end, and unfortunately it is a topic that we could go on and on. So I left some context in the box for you to be able to connect with Ms. Petra. Thank you very much, Ms. Petra Mitchell, Mr. Stefan Schale, and also to Mr. Jurček Žmaut from Slovenian American Business Association in Cleveland for introducing us, Petra. You're also a member of SABA, correct?
Yes.
So we are also working together, our partners in the United States, and we've been working closely on projects and exchanging contacts. So I would like to thank you all attendees for joining us today, and stay well, and hope we're going to see you on the next event next month. So thank you again, and goodbye to Canada, United States, Belgium, Slovenia, Brazil, from all over the world. Thank you one more time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.